All right. Hello, refiners. Welcome back to another episode of the Refine Podcast. Today, I'm doing something different because Braden just challenged me in the moment to use video because I've been saying all along, I'm going to take these podcasts to YouTube, and I just haven't done it. So here I am, no makeup, in my tie-dye sweatshirt. And we're just going to, I've always said this, just start somewhere. Just get it up there. Don't worry about perfection. So Braden, thank you for that challenge.
I got
Now,
you.
for those of you that don't know my friend Braden, this is Braden Drake. Hello, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here as always to chat with you and your people.
Yeah, you're a second time guest for this not being a guest show. You're a two-timer. I love it.
That's my goal. I think I'm like most frequent guest on like 4 or 5 different podcasts now. So maybe we'll make that our New Year's goal to see how many
We know some
podcasts we
goals.
can conquer. Yeah.
So Braden recently sponsored our Wedding MBA Mixer and Conference Confident. And so thank you so much for that. We really appreciate your support in that way. Renee and I both do, and the attendees as a whole. So Braden, for those of you that are not familiar, though, I would imagine within my audience you are. So hopefully we bring some new faces to your community, Braden, though. Braden is a lawyer and focuses on tax law, business legality, like all the setups and all of that for creatives as a whole. So not just wedding pros, but we've definitely looped him into the wedding scene. So here we are. Braden, would you love to tell us a little bit more about yourself in sunny San Diego?
Sure. So I moved from Indiana to San Diego almost 10 years ago for law school. And then I got a master's degree in tax law. So I commonly get mistaken for a CPA. I'm not a CPA, I'm a tax attorney. But now in my business, I've hired bookkeepers that work for me as employees. I'll be hiring a tax preparer soon, and I subcontract with the CPA. So we're actually moving to kind of like an all-inclusive business model where we kind of do all these things for creatives in general. Wedding industry is definitely my biggest segment of my audience, but we also work with a lot of interior designers, graphic designers, business coaches, consultants, and other creative type folks.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you in this industry. I know that this is a topic or this is an angle of business that is overwhelming to a lot of us, especially creatives, because our brains just don't think this way. We think about, pretty things and whatnot. But when it comes to math, especially for me, 2 + 2 is 5. I always say that. So when it comes to managing and studying my books, it takes an extra amount of effort and, a responsibility. And I have to really be focused on that to do it. But it's really important. It's not something we can neglect. And I think a lot of us look at our business from the angle of vanity metrics, wherein we're like, oh yeah, I've got great numbers, things are good, I'm profitable, and I can afford this or this budget that, and it's all based off of the feeling versus the actual numbers. So and I've fallen into that trap too before, but because I know the importance of not doing that, not falling into that trap. It's fine to have like estimates and roundabouts, but definitely got to back it up with a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Braden, before we hit record on this, we were kind of talking about some information we could bring to the group, or things that we could just toss back and forth and chat on. So I think the format for today, those that are listening, I think it's just gonna be casual conversation on a few little topics. No real structure or like outline here, but that's what I like about Braden. So we could do that. So
I like it too because, and you're probably similar. When I do solo shows, I can't just like free talk. I have to have an outline, and it has to be like, this is the bullet pointed thing that we're talking about. So it is nice when we do interviews just to make it more casual, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I don't know that any of these questions necessarily build on each other, go together. It's just kind of round robin of random topics, and I love it. So, okay. One thing that you mentioned was, and I loved this. You were talking about how people have this mindset of false or a irresponsible mindset of getting their taxes down to zero or like writing everything off. Talk to us about that and your philosophies.
Oh God. Okay. Where do I even start? So I've been preparing for this free training that we're doing next week, and we're gonna tell all your people about that like later on. So we'll
Right.
do that. And in doing this, I'm consuming like more TikTok advice than normal, and Instagram and Facebook and everything else. And you all know what I'm talking about. We see it all over the place. I think most people have a pretty good like BS detector when it comes to this stuff, but some people are really compelling with their advice, right? And you'll see people out there that do webinars on like how to pay $0 in tax. And I call BS on that all the time because ultimately in a business, like you're going to owe taxes on your profit. So the only way to not pay taxes is to have no profit, which means you're spending all of your money. And if you're like most of us, like we have shit to pay for outside of our business, right? We have student
Mm,
loans and we have houses and apartments and cars and maybe even children. I don't have that, but many of you do. They're expensive, so I hear.
mm,
So you you have to have
yeah.
money. A lot of those topics are more, they really come down to more advanced strategy, like buy investment properties because they're basically tax shelters and do this and do that. And that's great if you're financially there, or if you're one of those people who wants to live like as frugally as possible so that you can channel all your money into that. That's great. If you're one of those people, go find one of those educators. That's not me though. I think most of those pieces of advice are for people who already are like doing pretty well, have a lot of money, and want to get super creative and
Yeah.
maybe too creative legally, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Little gray areas. Well, I think too, when you write everything off like that, you struggle with, I mean, for experience share. I have never written everything off, but you can get it down to where I just remember when we bought our first house together as a couple, John and I didn't show enough income to be part of the paperwork, or however it was. I don't remember how all it was. And
Yeah.
we ended up having, and John's a business owner as well. So we found ourselves in this pickle, and his parents ended up having to co-sign for us as like 33 something year old adults pregnant with a child. And it was just so weird. And we refinanced it right away as we could, but it's like we have this income. We can do it, but it just like wasn't showing the right way on paper. And so those things can backfire too. And we just have to be mindful of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's super common, and it's funny. Some of your audience may be familiar with my new drag business. Some of them may not, but I started doing similar services for drag queens, which has been really fun. And for them, it's been a even bigger issue because a lot of them operate like in cash only, and they don't deposit their money, and so they have no record of income. And it's real wild. And I talked to one of them who's trying to go buy a house. And so I was like, well, what did you show as profit on your tax return last year? $20,000 is what she showed as profit. But she's like, but really, I made like $100,000. And I was like, okay, you have fun going and telling your mortgage lender, my
Yeah.
tax return shows that I only made 20,000, but I really made 100,000. Please give me a large and substantial loan. They're going to tell you, hell no, right? So oftentimes we do shoot ourselves in the foot. And look, like realistically speaking, like you need to report all of your income. You need to report the things that are actually deductible. Like there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there, really. Where there is
Yeah.
wiggle room, though, is you might say, I want to buy a house next year. So I'm going to run my business super lean this year so that I can have a high profit, so that I can get approved for a better loan. And that's the way that we ideally should think about it. Or
Yeah.
if you want to join that $10,000 mastermind, like don't join in December, join it in January so that your business is $10,000 more profitable this year if you need that to get approved for something.
And I love that you illustrate you specify the timing there, because and I'm guilty of having done this in the past too, so is what it is, but like it's starting to drive me a little bananas when I see people sell things under the premise of you can write it off. Like that's the
Uh-huh.
tagline. It's write off. Like
Uh-huh.
that's the marketing scheme versus like, no, I have a valuable thing that'll change your life. And
Oh,
I don't know that
geez.
that's
Yeah.
necessarily, I mean, it is a write off. There's nothing wrong with saying that, but there's a follow up there of like, but that may or may not be wise for you, dear buyer. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um,
So
I've
today,
noticed that. And you notice it at the end of the year, everyone's like pushing their stuff and like, it's write off, it's write off.
yeah, today actually, and I mean this in today in the sense of the day this I know this podcast is going to be released. I have a episode that I'm releasing, which I actually have to record after we get done recording this, titled Your Year-End Action Plan. And I'm talking about that. I actually have that as a topic that I'm going to discuss, is
Yeah.
people promoting their products as the end of year tax deduction. Because for most of the clients I work with, it actually doesn't make sense. Because if you are in a business growth trajectory, it oftentimes makes more sense to spend in the new year. Do you want to break that down a little bit? Because I can give
Let's do.
specifics.
I think that's really, yeah, do.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea is like we all, I think, generally understand graduated tax brackets, right? So the more money you make, the higher your tax percentage is. So really simply speaking, like, and I'll give you a very clear example. So my business growth trajectory, I made $12,000 my first year because I started halfway through the year, right? My second year I did 30, my third year I did 70, and the next year I did 140, right? So 70 to 140, that's a big tax jump. So if I spend a bunch of money in December to get a tax deduction, I'm paying less tax that year than I did the next year when I doubled my income, right? So I actually would save more money by spending in January. The exception to this is if you haven't been paying any quarterly taxes and you know that you're going to owe a lot of money, it can be helpful to get some tax deductions, because then that can reduce your penalties that you're going to owe for not paying those quarterlies. But the catch 22 to that is, and this happens every year, I talk to people who say, oh, well, I haven't paid any quarterly taxes, so I'm going to spend my $5,000 in savings on tax deductions. And it's like, okay, so that $5,000 in spending is going to save you $1,000 in taxes. But then when you get your $5,000 tax bill
So to
in
pay it.
April, it's like you've saved $1,000, but now you have no money to pay the tax. And people don't think
Yeah.
about that. That's
Well,
what drives me bananas.
another way of thinking about it is like, would you have bought that thing anyway?
Right.
And so now you've spent, I don't know what the 60 cents to save 40 cents or whatever. I mean, that's not the right numbers, but it's like my husband always says, it's not on sale if you don't need it. Right?
Yes.
Like, great, it's 60% off, 50% off, but like you still wouldn't have spent anything in the first place.
Yeah, your husband is
So
spot on. What I like to tell people is look at your tax bracket, figure out what tax bracket you're in, and that's the percentage of taxes you save whenever you buy something for a tax deduction. So if you're in the 20% bracket, a business expense is going to save you 20% tax. So if you walk into Best Buy and like new MacBooks are 20% off, are you going to say, oh, hell yeah, like let me buy 5? No, like you might buy one if you actually need a computer. That would be the time to buy it, right? But otherwise, you're not just going to buy shit because it's on sale. And that's the same way we should look at tax deductions.
yeah. My husband gets lucky in the sale department is that I'm on this like annual buy a computer plan, and it happens to fall around Black Friday every year that I ruin a computer. So like drop it or I spill water on it or something. And I think for the last 3 Black Fridays, I've bought a new computer. And I'm like, well, the
Oh,
timing has
damn.
worked out.
Okay.
But
I'm
that's
on
the
like
thing.
an
It's like,
every, yeah, I'm on an every other year plan. And I thought that was a quick turnaround. But
it's
mine
bad.
usually, knock on wood, is usually just because my computer starts to get slow. And I'm kind of at this point in my business where I'm like, as soon as the spinning wheel starts to happen,
You're not going to deal
I
with
don't
it.
have time for that. I'm running a business. A fast computer means more money because I'm getting more stuff done. I'm going to trade this shit in.
100%. This fall, my daughter sat on my computer. It was open, and I had it on the ground. It's my bad. I had it where I thought it was safely off the ground, but she was like running around and she fell and sat on it. And I was like,
Yeah, and I
of
remember I
course.
saw your Black Friday post where you talked about like why you don't spend that much money on computers anymore. And in that case, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, and the ones that I have, they're awesome. They're so like the battery, they last for 15, 17 hours. They run really fast. And I only spend $400 on them. I do all my design. Anyway, we're derailing. But this whole tax conversation about write it off. There are so many pros and cons. And I think that a lot of us tend to dismiss some of the cons, or like maybe not cons, but like just don't consider the full picture. So I'm glad that you're teaching us those things.
Yeah, I like to focus on, so this is to kind of wrap up this topic. I like to focus on profitability first and tax strategy second. So it's like, all right, well, what's the best for our business? And then how can we maximize our tax savings like within that existing plan?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had someone tell us recently, The tax brackets can feel good and feel awful at the same time. And so,
Uh-huh.
as you grow and you scale and you enter new tax brackets, one thing that helped my mindset was a mentor telling me, you get to pay taxes. You get to pay for a school lunch for a kiddo who's got a single mom working 3 jobs. You get to contribute to new highways or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
love to be the steward of how our money is spent, because this is a topic for another day. Like, who's spending our money well? I don't know. But it did help me to think of it in that way. So maybe that helps some of you.
Yeah.
But
I like that.
okay.
I think about that a lot because I love to drive. I'm like that person who, when I get bored at home, like yesterday, I literally like for my lunch break, I drove to Barnes and Noble to like buy a new notebook just because I wanted to get out of the house. And when I do that, I think about, I love my car. I'm obsessed with my car. And I always like to think my tax dollars are help paying for this road as I'm going like 50 miles an hour on a roundabout. And I'm like, that feels pretty good.
No, I mean, there are some things about where our tax dollars go that are really frustrating. And then there are some
Yeah.
things about where our tax dollars go that like are incredible.
Uh-huh.
And I've learned some more about that even as a mom, just seeing how children benefit from that. Some things that I just hadn't known to consider. So or I knew, but like watching it in action with my child entering this program or that program, like when the world shut down with COVID and then my kid like couldn't read, it's like, oh, there's a reading program.
Yeah.
I didn't
I
know how to
often
teach him
tell
how to do that.
people, especially I know the adults who hate their tax dollars going to schools because they don't have children. I'm
No,
like,
it's
I
hard.
kind of get it. I'm kind of get it, but like also I don't plan on having children. But at the same time, when I'm like 70, I don't want to be surrounded by idiots who are younger than me. So I'm more than happy to help pay
Yes.
for their
See,
education.
that's it. You're investing in the future, and people invested in your future. I mean, you went to school.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's just kind of how the world goes around. Okay, next topic, and we'll probably have enough to say about this one. Let's do this topic and then let's share your Profit RX and everything. So this one,
Okay, cool.
credit cards. Are credit card fees the cost of doing business? Do we absorb those? Do we pass those on? I know that there are some states it's illegal, some states it's fine. What's your thought?
Yeah, my thought is, God, it's people here's my general take is I think people like to worry and stress just for the sake of worrying and stress. And this is one of the things that people like to worry and stress about. Credit card fees, they're a cost of doing business, everybody. All right. What I always tell people is if you're looking at your bookkeeping and you're like, these credit card fees are really making it so that I can't pay my other expenses, raise your damn prices. All right. That's
Yeah.
the problem. With that aside, though, there are some things you can do, right? Like a lot of payment processors or a lot of CRMs will allow you to take ACH payments, which is great. You can encourage your clients to do that. I have some tips on that. You probably do as well. Otherwise, to answer the legal question real quick, I can tell you pretty sure, don't quote me on this, everybody, but in California, the rule is you can't charge an extra fee for credit cards, but you can give a discount for people who pay with cash, check, or ACH, which is kind of dumb. It really just comes to semantics and how you word it. But
Exactly. That's
yeah,
the rule in Texas. And before they made it legal to pass those fees on, we just did the opposite. We're like, here's your discount. Like, I don't know.
yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, and the thing is I know if you're using Honeybook or something like that, you can apply the discount to the invoice, but then I don't think there's a toggle you can use to turn off the credit card payments. So you could give them the discount and they could still theoretically pay with their credit card, right? So,
Mhm. That's
it's
true.
kind of, yeah, I just like to like not even do that because at the end of the day, especially in weddings, I think my opinion is that even if you in your mind are not serving a luxury market, it's a luxury service because, at the end of the day, like most people can reasonably like do most of their own wedding stuff. If they're hiring you, it's because it's something that they want to invest in and pay for, and they don't want to be nickeled and dimed at that point, is my opinion. What I recommend to people is in the email, when you send the email that says, here's your invoice, you just add a really quick line that says, we appreciate ACH payments as it saves us on credit card processing fees. However, we are happy to accept any form of payment. And if your clients really want the credit card points, they're going to pay with their credit card and they shouldn't feel awkward about it. But if they don't have a preference, that little line might help, 20 to 30% of your clients pay with ACH when they might not otherwise.
Yeah. I don't disagree with any of that. I think I have your first line of it's a cost of doing business, I agree with, but I don't know, I've started falling in this like neutral camp of like, what is it? We're these small businesses and there's Zelle with like no fees, like it's just as fast. And if I will say I'm not a big fan of cash or like hard cash or
Yeah.
checks, because that delays the process.
Yeah.
A check, it may or may not go through, and no one's sitting around for a week or two waiting for you to start the process. And you want your money too before they go change their mind. And with cash, you still have to like meet up or something. No one's mailing that. It's like,
Yeah.
I
No.
like cash in the sense that like you don't have to put it on your books really, but I mean, it's just
We
fussy.
don't tell people that, Amber. That's not.
That's why I made my face, watch the YouTube, I'm like, "Arr,"
Yeah.
under my breath. But like, I think, you should put it on your books. And in the long run, not putting cash on your books can just what we were talking about, writing stuff off, like it can still backfire. And so
Yeah.
be mindful of that. But also like ACH and all those other things, like there can be business delays, like business day delays in there, like what, 3-5 days to get your money. And people change their mind. They're ready to go. You're ready to go. You want your money. So do what gets you your money the fastest. And some processors, you don't get your credit card payments right away, but you're going to get that. Like there's no reversing that the same way you can to others.
Yeah, ultimately, like you want the process to be as frictionless as possible, right? Like we shouldn't be taking checks from people anymore unless you work with like a baby boomer and up clientele who are not only happy to do that, but that's their preference. Like unless that's your ideal client, like you want to make it as frictionless as possible. And personally, and this is my viewpoint, but I think a lot of people would agree with me. I just don't think that like Venmo and similar platforms are professional. I don't mind, like, to me, I pay like my massage therapist via Venmo, my housekeeper, if I want to go get my haircut and it was like, more of a mom and pop place and they wanted me to Venmo them. I think it makes sense for those kind of like in-person services. But when you're going to send a contract and you're asking for $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 from someone, like, I think we can up level the professionalism. And that's why, I'm a big advocate of using a CRM and sending invoices.
Yeah. I hear that. I
don't know if I hired a photographer and they're like, all right, my fee is $3,000-$4,000 and they're like, all right, Venmo me the money, I would start to kind of question whether I could trust this person. Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
See, I've never thought of it that way because maybe just because I see so much of it where I live. I don't know. Because Austin is a creative market. Like we are a gig economy, everything's artist. And well, it used to be, it's turning into super tech and all that. But I just see so much of it. And now that you have the business features on those platforms to protect yourself as a consumer, I feel okay about it. I would never, before those features, I didn't like it because I didn't feel like, there was any measure of protection for either.
Yeah, I think it's fine as long as it's like set up as a business account. And when I'm paying you, I can tell that it is. If it's just like friend to friend Venmo,
no, that's definitely too casual.
Yeah, too casual. And it's just my immediate assumption is like, oh, you're new. And like that's fine, especially if you're like I hired a family photographer just to do like portraits for me and my husband. Because we never got wedding photos. So I hired someone like 2 years later to take photos like where we got married when we went there for our anniversary. And that was like $400 via Venmo. I wasn't worried about it. But if I was doing something like more substantial, I would want to.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You definitely want a business to look like a business. You don't want it to look too casual or too new or too like you're skirting around the rules. And we've all seen those businesses that send the PayPal invoice and they're like, put it on friends and family. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. But I've been studying Gen Z a lot lately because I've been really fascinated with, our world has turned upside down. A lot of things have changed with our client management, but I think we're pointing the finger too much at a pandemic and staffing shortages and things like that, when I think that there's also a generational switch that's happening in our transition that's starting to happen in our consumer base. And I do think Gen Z is one that is likes those cash apps. You know what I mean? And doesn't think
Yeah.
much twice about it. But that's the thing, is we have to know that about our consumers, about our ideal clients, about but I hadn't thought of it that way. Maybe because, like I said, where I live, but I think you're onto something. I think that
It
is good to
also could
consider.
be, yeah, there are so many angles we could look at this. It also could be like a B2B versus B2C thing. Because as
Yeah.
a business hiring other business owners, I'm like, I want everything to run through my business. And I don't really have Venmo set up for my business. So if I'm hiring a brand photographer to do a shoot for my website, it's like, I need to pay with my business credit card. Like, please send me an invoice. So I don't know. Lots of different probably things that play into that too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so tell us tell us about the webinar that you're doing. Tell us more about Profit RX and how we can learn more about these things from you, and get our wheels spinning on topics we hadn't thought to think about.
Sure. So this coming Tuesday, which should be the 13th, I believe, I'm doing I call it a masterclass, webinar, free training, all the same thing. I'm doing two of them, one at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 Eastern, and another at 12 Pacific Standard Time, which is 3 Eastern. And the topic is 7 legal and tax myths, busting through the BS, something, something, something. I never remember the full subtitle. But essentially, we're breaking down some hot topics that I see online that I actually think are costing people more money than they need to spend. So I just think that'll be a fun topic for people to learn about. And then at the end of the webinar, like usual, I'll do an invite into my program. And after we launch this program, the doors are going to close at least until, I haven't decided if we'll open it again, like right before the end of tax season or after tax season, but it'll be the time to get into the program. And then if
Yeah.
people show up live, we'll have a special live bonus that you can only get if you come to the webinar and join the program.
And stay throughout the webinar.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta stay. Don't just show up and ditch out in 5 minutes.
I am very proud of, we have really good show up rates and I don't know what you call it, but we track the number of people who come to the beginning of the webinar and are still there at the end, and
For sure.
our
We do
metrics are
too.
really good. So
Yeah, well, that's because, and if you're listening and you've not been to one of Braden's master classes, Braden teaches, a lot of people will do those and it's just promotion, promotion, promotion. Braden's a giver in those, very educational, very informative, and is a fun, you're a fun teacher. You're engaging and you answer questions and there's just really nothing off the table, and I think people appreciate that about you. So if you are newer to Braden, definitely sign up for this masterclass and get an idea for his education style and just giving nature, you definitely price for profit and take care of yourself and all of that. But you do see a value in, give a little, get a little.
yes,
So
exactly.
I love it.
And you're going to share your affiliate link for that, right? So it'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me. And I guess as far as my first time on YouTube, I will hit stop on recording, but you stay online for a second. Cool.
Okay, perfect. I'll
Okay.
see everyone in the training. And if you all have questions about it, just send me a DM or something.
Perfect. Yeah. I will where would you like people to find you?
So find me on Instagram at Braden Adam Drake, Braden, Adam like the biblical figure, Drake like the rapper. That's my full Instagram. And quick highlight, because we didn't mention this, my program covers bookkeeping, LLC formation, S corp formation, contracts, insurance, all the things. And also, for the first time ever, we are rolling out full service tax services. So membership members will be able to hire our firm to do their tax returns this coming tax season too. So I think that's going to be very
excited for you. I'm excited you're adding all of that. And thank you for the reminder of that. Not being a guest show, I don't have that in my SOP here. So good.
No worries.
Good. Okay. All right. Bye, everyone. We'll catch you next week.
Cheers.
Are you sure?